So right now there are over 7,000 youth in foster care, which is, I think right now it's the largest I've ever seen the number. And we were actually dipping below 7,000 several months ago, and now we've gone back up. So I don't know if that's related to COVID or not, but we're definitely the highest number I've ever seen.
Hey guys, welcome to the 3880 podcast. This is a special foster care month edition of the podcast. I have two special guests with me. I have, what's your name?
Megan. And my name is Megan, and I am 5 years old.
Very good. And I also have
Marley. My name is Marley, and I'm 9
I
years
forgot how
old.
old you were. Marley forgot how old she was. So guys, today we're having a special episode where we talk with Mission West Virginia with Kelly Thompson, the executive director, and Rachel Kinder of the Frameworks program about foster care in West Virginia, and a little bit more about how you can plug in to help support. My two little ones here, Marley and Megan, were both adopted as babies right here in West Virginia, and they're happy and healthy. Happy most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? You're happy? Maybe a little bit? Okay, can you say thanks for listening?
Thanks for
listening.
All right, enjoy the show. So Kelly and Rachel, welcome to the 3880 podcast. It's great to have you on board. Kelly Thompson is the executive director of Mission West Virginia, and Rachel Kinder is the director of the Frameworks program. So welcome, guys. May is National Foster Care Month, and I'm excited to have this conversation to share more about what you guys do as an organization. Who you're serving, and maybe what challenges you have, and really ultimately to figure out what are some steps you can take to help out, to be more involved in foster care needs. And so that's kind of our conversation today. So maybe take a minute. Kelly, you want to introduce yourself, and then Rachel, we can move to you.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Thompson, as you said, and Executive Director of Mission West Virginia. And I have been with Mission West Virginia, I think the longest now, for 17 years, Rachel? I think 17, maybe 18. So
18.
A long time, yeah. I started as the director of our One Church, One Child initiative, which was to find families and faith communities in West Virginia to foster or adopt. And so I've been there ever since.
Awesome.
And I'm the Frameworks director at Mission West Virginia. I also started as the One Church, One Child director. I just kind of want to move into whatever spot Kelly vacates. I've been there almost 14 years, and Frameworks is our foster care, adoption, kinship care initiative. And I'm also a mom who has adopted through foster care.
Cool. And just to note, I have three daughters, 16, 9, and 5. I have to always remember the ages. My youngest two are both adopted as babies here from in West Virginia. We went through Children's Home Society, so it's been a part of our story for many years, and we love being advocates for foster and adopt. So tell us, and you guys can take turns. It doesn't matter who really goes first, but tell us a little bit more about who you are as an organization.
So Mission West Virginia, we're a nonprofit. Our office is based out of Putnam County, but we serve the entire state of West Virginia. We have been around for over 20 years now. About 22 years ago, Governor Underwood used some leftover campaign dollars to start our organization, and we have worked to help a lot of different populations since then, but the longest has been kids in foster care.
So our Frameworks program really works with lots of different angles of foster care adoption, recruiting foster parents, recruiting families for children who are waiting in foster care, and also working with kinship and relative families.
I've spoken on the topic a couple of times at River Ridge Church, and I'm part of that church, and we've been advocates for recruiting foster care families and adoptive families for many years now, and work with Kelly and her team at Mission West Virginia through those initiatives. But I remember a couple years ago I had talked about adoption and foster care and the needs in West Virginia. So can you guys maybe share a little bit about what you're experiencing in terms of what the needs are, what the number of kids who are waiting, how that's increased over the last couple of months with COVID, and how that's sort of been a challenge for you guys.
Sure. So right now there are over 7,000 youth in foster care, which is, I think right now it's the largest I've ever seen the number. And we were actually dipping below 7,000 several months ago, and now we've gone back up. So I don't know if that's related to COVID or not, but we're definitely the highest number I've ever seen. So there is definitely a need for foster and adoptive parents, pretty much anywhere in the state, any county. Some have more needs than other counties, but there's not a part of the state where we don't need foster parents.
Mm-hmm. What, in terms of programs and services that Mission West Virginia offers, I know there are a number of different agencies in the state and places you can go for training and placement. So tell us a little bit more about what specifically you guys do and the programs that you offer.
Sure. Foster care certification in West Virginia is a little complicated if you don't know the ins and outs of it. About 5 years ago, West Virginia privatized. So that basically means if you want to be a foster and adoptive parent, you can't just go through your county DHHR. The county DHHR workers, they are working with kinship and relative families only. So if you want to be a foster parent, there are 11 private agencies in West Virginia that can work with you. We fill a really unique role because we're the only agency that is a statewide and neutral referral source. So we put out recruitment messaging in a lot of different ways. And then when families call us, we give them responses, information packets, answer their questions, and then refer them to all of the different agencies that are in their county. So if you're in Kanawha County, you might have 9 agencies to choose from. If you're in a smaller county in West Virginia, you might not have as many agencies that serve that county. But we break it down and say, you can work with any of these, and here's how to choose an agency that's a good fit for your family. And then we follow up with those families pretty extensively, calling them back at 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, and on, just to make sure that they have support. Even while they have moved on to work with that private agency, we're still there as a support to them.
That's great. And we talked about numbers a minute ago, but in general terms, what's the current climate of foster care in West Virginia now? Are you seeing more families come in? Has it been more challenging since we've been in quarantine, if you will? What's kind of happening in your worlds?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right at the beginning, agencies really kind of had to hustle to get things in place to adapt to the quarantine, the pandemic, and all of that. So what happened was that they got permission to move some of their trainings online. And it's not just a webinar style training, it's an interactive training where there has to be back and forth between the instructor and the families. So we have a lot of families getting certified in that way, getting trained. They can do things like partial safety checks virtually. They can do applications and interviews virtually. Not 100% of the process, but as much as they can. The agencies really worked hard to quickly move online. We are actually seeing an increase in inquiries because, well, partly due to just we've stepped up our recruitment right now, but partly due to being a resource that's listed when Governor Justice does his press conferences, because DHHR and the governor's office wanted to make it really clear that foster parents are still needed. You can still work through the certification process, and here's how to do it. So we have a staff person that the phones are forwarded directly to her, and she's still doing everything she used to just from her home.
And I'll add to that, Rachel. We're uncertain right now what it's going to look like when kids go back in public settings. I have heard from child advocacy centers that their referrals are actually down for child abuse at the moment because we don't have those community allies and that extra set of eyes on these kids and families. So we're preparing, the agencies are preparing, getting those families through the process. And then we've been getting that influx of inquiries. So when children are back out in school settings or daycares or churches, just in the public with those extra set of eyes, hopefully won't be too far behind with the families that are coming forward.
Yeah. Are you seeing children being placed now as well?
I'm hearing from the private agencies that they are still getting a fair amount of referrals for placement.
Okay.
But I know that nationally, the numbers of abuse and neglect inquiries are down, at least across the country. And we're all assuming they're down in West Virginia as well.
Right. I get this a lot. Again, as a adoptive parent myself, I get lots of questions and misconceptions maybe around what it takes to be a foster parent or to adopt a child. And so I'm sure that you guys answer lots of questions with folks who are asking, but what are some common things that maybe start with misconceptions that people have about foster care, or the things that come to mind in terms of parents who are couples, individuals who are interested in being foster families, but they think something that's not actually true? Are there things that come to mind for you guys?
Definitely. We answer those questions probably on a daily basis. And the basic misconception is that you have to be a perfect family to qualify. So we answer questions about, I'm a single mom, or I'm divorced, and marital status is not a factor. If you are in a relationship, it has to be a stable relationship, but you can absolutely be a single parent and foster or adopt. You don't have to be rich. There's not an income minimum that you have to prove. You just have to show that you are financially stable. There are certain things that we do tell people, you have to have less than 6 kids in your home. 6 kids is the max for being a foster parent. You can't have a felony conviction. Things like that absolutely would rule you out. But the idea that this is something that the average family can't do is definitely a misconception.
And as far as timing goes, I hear that question a lot in terms of how long does it take? What's the process like? So maybe if you could share a little bit, maybe a quick version of the process and the steps that a family would need to take to become ready for foster care.
Sure. So if a family contacts us, we try to be the first step in the process. So if they contact us, we would send them their info, and then hopefully they would choose an agency based on that. And the basic process, these agencies can vary a little bit, but is to fill out an application with that agency, to attend their training classes. A home study usually involves about 3 visits to the family's home. They will do interviews with everyone who lives there. They do criminal background checks and adult protective service, child protective service background checks. There are references, there's the safety check of the home, and then they'll work like a medical exam from your physician, driver's licenses, insurance, pet vaccinations, just, a fair amount of forms that they fill out and paperwork. But those are the 3 basic steps: application, training, and the home study. And we tell people about 3 to 6 months is pretty average. I know it took my husband and I about 4 months, and it seemed like a pretty good timing to do all of those things.
And another important point to note is when we get from people, we just want to make it clear there are children in West Virginia who are currently waiting for a family. And so we have kids who have waited for years for a family. So there are children waiting to be adopted in our state and all across the United States.
So in West Virginia, it's the same process to be certified as a foster parent as an adoptive parent. So we go ahead and certify you for both. That way you can pursue adoption eligible children, or you can be a foster parent, and if that child becomes adoption eligible, then you're already certified to be an adoptive resource.
And Kelly, you mentioned that there are children waiting, and I think that's probably what people tend to see most is and understand that there are kids who are available for adoption, available to be fostered, and they want to take action really quick. And the frustration maybe sometimes lies in, well, then you have to go through this process. And how do you talk to families about that when they're so excited to kind of jump in and go, and then you're like, well, it's going to be 4 to 6 months. And I get it, and I totally agree that that's the case. But how do you guys help with that?
Well, one thing is just to kind of reiterate that this process and training is to help prepare those families for what foster care and adoption is going to look like. So the training is important in that regards, because They may not have ever fostered, or some families have never parented. So it's just beneficial to that family to be prepared. And then also we reiterate with them that the safety is important of these children. And so we have to go through these steps and measures to ensure that they're not being put into another family setting that is abusive or neglectful. And so safety and then just the training is an important component of that. It's all necessary.
And I totally agree. And do you use things like the movie Instant Family? Do you ever show families those sorts of things? It's kind of joking, but the movie where Mark Wahlberg and his wife bring in 3 kids, and it's hilarious, but it's also, I think it's probably a bit of a true picture into what these kids are going through and the backgrounds that they have, bringing in some of the baggage that they've had over the years, and then trying to integrate with new people and new families. So I certainly value the training. And those are just, I think it's fun to see those sort of things being played out in the media, but at the same time, there's a bit of reality in there.
Yeah,
we actually had it. Go ahead, Rachel.
We actually had an event last summer with Huntington Parks and Rec. They did a showing of that movie at Ritter Park, and we had families come and get information. And absolutely, we try to be really creative in what we do for recruitment. And there are some really good tools out there like that we've used.
Our biggest service. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
One service we provide too, in addition to that, is during the process, when the families are going through the process with these agencies, we're still continuing to contact them to make sure that no one's dropped the ball or that they need encouragement. We have a resource library of books that are available for them for free that we'll send them. And we just have that one support person who continues to call them to make sure everything is flowing smoothly as possible.
What kind of challenges are you guys facing right now? And this maybe not necessarily has to do with the coronavirus and the things that we're dealing with now in our work environments, but as an organization, what are your biggest challenges that you want people to know about?
Well, I think just in relation to the coronavirus, when this all started, our greatest fear, we have grandparents and relatives out there who are raising their kin. And so we are, I think my heart and worries have been with them this entire time and with children who are in abusive homes. So what we're doing during this time is doing everything we can possibly behind the scenes to get up and ready to respond to families when they need us. And then Mission West Virginia as an organization, we're always challenged with funding. We have secured state and federal and private foundation funding in the form of grants, but every year you keep your fingers crossed and hope that even though you met all the goals, that funding continues. So we're constantly, at least annually, looking to ensure that we fund our programs. And in addition to those grants, one area that we always need help in, grant funding is restricted. So when we see a need, especially Rachel and her team, when there's a need out there, we can't always respond with our grant funds. So we have had community partners come forward and make donations, and we have that money available. So one thing Rachel and her team did during the pandemic was to call the families to see if they needed anything. And then they're learning that these families may need computers to help with homework with their grandkids. Right. They need clothing. And so we've had some funds available for that to use on a very small scale. So we can't really advertise them, but they're there and on a small scale.
I know that one thing we heard a lot about was grandmas who had inadequate transportation, and just as supplies became limited, helping them find things like diapers and overnights, and grandmas who needed, we helped out with bedding for a grandma, and just some things that they couldn't get out to get but were really necessary. And like Kelly said, we had a grandma who was really struggling to school her two grandsons that she had taken in suddenly, didn't have a computer for them to use, and was really just kind of at her wit's end trying to keep up with this. So we have definitely been grateful to have those funds to help those families immediately.
Even the most well-seasoned parent is probably struggling with teaching their kids at home.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge for a lot of people, I'm sure. Tell me about things that are happening that you guys are excited about. I know one thing that I noticed on your social media, on your Facebook page, which I'll put some links to different resources in the show notes afterwards, but tell me about the Family Story project that you guys just launched.
Sure, we are really excited about that. So May is foster care month, and we always do events that month. Traditionally, we did a walk in Charleston. This year, before the pandemic hit, I think Kylie, my coworker, who is kind of tasked with putting all of this together, she had another movie planned and had some other in-person events planned. We kind of had to revamp that pretty quickly. So for May, we are launching on our website and on social media a project to kind of share family moments. So we've done projects before where people share their whole story, but this time we were just trying to capture moments, like when I first met my child, when I knew that foster care was the right decision, a day in the life of a foster parent, accompanied with pictures. So Kylie has worked really hard putting that together. I think the first story goes up today, and what we know is that existing foster parents are one of the best ways to recruit new foster parents. So we want to really show these positive but everyday moments in people's lives and hopefully inspire them. And I know that we got a lot of submissions, so we're excited to see those all month on social media.
Yeah, that's really cool.
We're still accepting stories too, because we said we use these for all kinds of things. We pull quotes out of them. We use them to inspire people. So we didn't cut off the submission deadline, so people can still share those, and we'll still use those.
That's great. And they can find that at your website and on your Facebook page. Is that correct?
Yes.
Maybe my last question is is how to take an action here. And one of the things I love to do is ask the folks that I talk with on this podcast is, what can people do to take a next step towards this cause, towards the organization? And so maybe there are a couple different things that you could recommend families or individuals who are interested in being a part of what you guys are doing. Maybe that's through community partnership funding. Maybe they are able to partner with you financially. I think probably folks who also want to get involved in foster care. So what are some simple next steps that folks can take?
A couple things that I always tell people they can do is, one, you can fill out our inquiry form. And so if you're interested in being a foster adoptive parent, it does not obligate you to anything, but you can at least get the basic info and look at that and just kind of take that first step. The second is to tell people there's need for foster parents, and then kind of repeat what I said earlier, that you don't have to be a perfect family to be a foster parent, and that the need is out there and that lots of different families can qualify.
We also we have a carry-on campaign that works to eliminate trash bags as acceptable forms of luggage for kids. And unfortunately, we can't take those in-person donations now, but we're going to be setting up an Amazon wish list to have items shipped to us that are new that we can get out to the kids. So we have always been responsive. When we see a need, we try to meet it. And so sometimes that takes financial donations. Sometimes that takes just word of mouth and sharing your story or sharing the story of others to encourage people to become foster or adoptive parents.
So tell me more about the Carry On campaign, and when do you foresee launching that? Because I could see that could be something that a few organizations that I'm involved in, River Ridge Church being one, could really get behind.
So it's already been launched. I mean, we've been doing it for about 9 years, and actually River Ridge was one of our first large donors about 9 years ago. And so we have collected thousands of pieces of luggage or hygiene products for kids in care. And so it's already in effect, but we currently aren't taking donations from the public. So we're going to set up some alternative ways to do that, which would probably be through Amazon, so we can have items shipped to us, or contributions made for the Carry On campaign that we can purchase those ourselves and get them out. So, but that's been a project we've had for years.
Yeah. So you'll have an Amazon link on your website, your Facebook page, that folks can go on and purchase a suitcase or luggage item, and at some point when things get back to normal, those could be donated. But that's going to be a great next step for folks who want to potentially get plugged in. And the reason that you need the luggage, like you said, which I don't want to miss that, which is a lot of kids have nothing to put their stuff in. They've got what little possessions they have in some of these homes, and in their transition, they carry them in garbage bags. And so the idea is to get them something nice to put their stuff in when they're moving from home to home. Is that a fair assessment of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've moved children in trash bags or totes, and so we just no longer wanted to send that message to children. We've had a great response from the community. And one thing that we always try to relay to our community is being a foster adoptive parent is not right for every family. But if you care about kids and you care about this population, get in touch with us. We have been, one of the great things I think about working for Mission West Virginia is we've been able to respond to needs, and we've been creative in our approach. And so when we have someone that says, I'm willing and able to help, then we try to find a way to fit them in. That's
great. So you mentioned getting in touch. What are the best ways to get in touch with you and your organization? What would you recommend people do next?
So we have a very active social media page on Facebook. So you can like Mission West Virginia on Facebook, and we put all of our events up there, our needs, share stories. So I would reach out to us on Facebook. We have a website, which is www.missionwv.org. And then we have which actually has our inquiry form. So if you're interested in becoming a foster parent, you can get on there and inquire, or just call us. We have a toll-free number, which is 866-CALL-MWV.
Great. I'll post all those resource links into the notes of the show, so folks can jump on there and hopefully fill out the interest form to tackle this ever-growing number of nearly 7,000 kids in foster care here in the state. So guys, I just want to say, Rachel and Kelly, thanks for taking the time to share about what you do. Number one, it's impacted my life with my two adopted kids. Without people like you, these kids would have no hope. So I just want to say thanks for sharing. Thanks for taking the time to be on the program today.
For having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, that's a wrap on episode 6 of the 3880 podcast as we celebrate National Foster Care Month. My kids loved hearing their voices on the podcast, so hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of them. One thing that you can do is check out the show notes. There's a couple of links in there for more information, but check out missionwv.org. And if you want to get involved and you want to do something right now, you can click on donate, and they have several options, different tiers of donations that do different things for these kids as they steward the money that comes in. $25 buys a backpack for kids with some hygiene items. $50 gets them a suitcase. You heard us talk about that in the episode, for kids who are transitioning in and out of foster care. So easy way for you to plug in and get started to get involved. If you want to learn more about foster care, click on that info form. If you're not in West Virginia, I would encourage you to check out some resources in your local area and learn more. Get the process started now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you soon.